Welcome back to Collateral Duty. This is a place where first responders can kick back, talk about the job, and everything in between. Whether it's stories from the field, the ups and downs of the work, or just the random thoughts that pop into our heads, we're here to have real conversations. So grab a coffee, settle in, and let's chat. Welcome back to Collateral Duty. Thank you everyone who's tuning in tonight. I have a very dear friend with me, L.A. Ford. We're going to talk about burnout. And he's been in public safety for almost 30 years, so I think he has something to share with that subject. We're going to talk a little bit about why it matters to talk about burnout. It gives you that opportunity to reevaluate your priorities, reevaluate your values, life goals. And it just gives you a greater sense of self-awareness. Do you have any personal reflections, any moment that stands out where you knew you were hitting that burnout point?
I do, but first of all, I'd like to thank you for inviting me onto your podcast. I think you're doing a great justice to public safety and getting the message out with mental wellness and mental health. So congrats to you.
Oh, thank you. That's what it's all about.
So, like you said, I've been doing this for 30 years, and I have been burnt out a couple of times in my career. One form of it, I knew I was being burned out because I couldn't get up, constantly sleeping through my alarm clock. And this is for me to get up to go work out, not even go to work. It was just like mental exhaustion is way worse, I think, than physical exhaustion. I felt very overwhelmed. And along with the overwhelmed feeling, I felt underappreciated. And all of those things just piled up on me and just made me feel like the world was on my shoulders.
Right.
So it was very, very heavy and dark moment for me. Because in public safety, we like to think that we're the warriors, the ones that's going to run into the fray without a shadow of a doubt. And I know for a fact that I would, but sometimes, but we don't even want to recognize our own mental wellness or our health. We in denial.
Right.
And for a while, I was very in denial, like, oh, nothing wrong with me. And then I started missing more and more time in the gym, and that's because the gym helped me a lot with my mental health, and it helps me with my wellness. And, if I miss too much of that, then I know something else on the back end is causing, because sometimes we don't even recognize it.
Right.
Like I said, to deny something is very true, and we don't want to admit that. We don't want to admit that we can be weak. All right. So in my lowest lows, I recognize that. I try to talk myself through the self-talk. But sometimes it's deeper than that. Sometimes you actually need to seek out advice from someone else that's that's their profession,
right,
to help you navigate through what you're going through. So when I recognized that I was in the deep end of the pool, as they say, I was treading water, getting very tired, right? And I got a life. Somebody threw me a life vest, pretty much, a life saver, whatever you call those things, the float,
right,
the floating device. What that floating device was, we have EAP. Back then it was an employee assistance program.
Yep.
And they gave you free 8 sessions. And it's good to sometimes to talk to someone who do not know you personally, and they can recognize things faster. Because sometimes your closest friends and family members will make excuses for you and be an enabler and not realize that's what they're doing, instead of being very honest with what they see. Because if you definitely can't see it, you definitely don't want your family members or your closest friend lying to you about it.
Right. So you led right into that next point that I was going to ask you about, and that's the signs and symptoms. You talked a lot about the physical changes that you go through when you're dealing with burnout, and that leading to a type of depression, your emotional changes, mental changes, and how sometimes, like you said, your closest friends and your family don't always, they maybe notice those things, but don't always want to say it.
Right.
Don't know if that would be hurtful or not, and I think it's a hard place to be in.
We need to really focus on, though. I think we need to focus on the hard truths from now.
For sure.
Because you're not sparing anyone.
Right.
And then there's no war is me because you didn't do your part as a family member or a friend by just being honest and open with someone. this is what I see, and I'm going to have concerns. There's nothing wrong with you having that honest, open conversation.
Right.
But we tend to want to beat around the bush and not hurt someone's feelings or start an argument. But if you're really concerned about someone and really care about them, then you will be honest with yourself and you will talk to them about their issues.
Right. What do you think, or not what do you think, you being in this line of work for almost 30 years, you see people in the beginning of their career, in the middle of the career, towards the end of their career, and burnout looks different for each one of those stages. Can you give me some examples of what you've observed being a supervisor or just being a peer in those different stages of this career?
Well, first of all, a lot of times people are just not honest. So if they want to pursue becoming a supervisor, for instance, and they think they're ready for that extra responsibility. And when they get in and they realize there's so much more to supervisors other than showing up, that now you're taking on other people's issues. You tend to listen to more. Depends on how many subordinates you might have under you. I wouldn't say all your subordinates have issues, but you have more responsibility other than yourself now. And that's along with the administration aspects of the job also. So it can be quite daunting if you didn't prepare yourself mentally for the job.
Right, for sure.
And you have to start changing the way you think, your perspective about how you see a certain situation, a certain incident, because when you was lower on before you became an administrator, your perspective was different. So some people tend to want to side. So for instance, so I won't sound like I'm rambling, a disciplinary issue. Now, before that individual became a supervisor, and he still was a subordinate, or she still was a subordinate, they had a different perspective on a situation. So their opinion would be skewed towards the subordinate, and they'll make an excuse for that particular person because they don't know the ins and outs or the totality of the situation.
Right.
And then as an administrator, you can't have that same approach. You have to be objective. You need to be consistent and all these things. And you need the biggest thing is you need to, I would say, try, if you had a worse supervisor, use that to become a better supervisor for yourself.
Right.
So if you know this supervisor didn't do right by you, didn't listen to your concerns when you had a concern, it can have been a valid concern for you, but but it wasn't affecting the entire workflow, right? And you wanted the supervisor maybe to sympathize for you, but it was just something that didn't need to be changed at the time, but you might have thought it was a grand idea. You didn't feel like you was heard, but allow people to be heard, and then show compassion and empathy for them. And you can tell them, you can let people down easy versus not paying them attention like they're not important.
Right. So you think that a lot of burnout in like the middle of your career, especially if you're on a supervisor track or an administrative track, that comes a lot from just learning that learning curve, like learning how to be a leader in these different levels, so to speak.
I totally agree. Yes.
Yeah. And then what about like someone who's at the tail end of their career, like someone who's been in public safety for 30 years, like yourself? What do you think what does that look like for you now?
Well, I try to stay relevant at all times and not retire on duty.
Right, right.
People retire at all facets, all levels, at all jobs. They just retire. I thoroughly love coming to work. I enjoy the people I work with. And if I feel like I'm not being productive, then it's time for me to go. And plus, I don't believe in just holding a position just because I have the position, I'm comfortable there. There's a time and place for everything, and all books come to an end. This chapter is soon to come to an end eventually, and you need to start preparing for that.
Right.
So I got my routine down packed, and I just keep it spicy, I keep it lively, and not try to be repetitive of doing the exact same thing all the time, because that will become boring eventually.
Yeah.
I am back in the gym consistently, watching how I eat and preparing myself for the aging process. I think I'm doing pretty decent, I would say. And because that's quite scary too. At the end of your career, what's next? And then some people will try to categorize you or define you as your previous position, and they think, oh, that's all you know, so what you going to do now? That's not. You got to think before you got into that career. There's plenty of things you was doing before you got into that career.
Right.
There's plenty of things you can do after you complete that career.
Right.
But you can't wait till retirement to prepare for retirement. And I'm not waiting or rushing retirement, but I am preparing for retirement.
For sure, for sure. No, I think that's part of the whole navigating a career like public safety is not losing focus on who you are as a person and not letting this career define you.
Yeah, the job.
And maintaining or keeping up with your hobbies and the things that you love, because if you spend 30 plus years in public safety or in even the military, something that's very structured and very routine, I think what happens when you retire, you leave that structure, you leave that routine, and if you don't have anything that defines you outside of that, you can often become lost, and that's when bad things happen.
Yeah, depression set in.
Yep.
That's not your self-worth. You're more than that position that you was in. Like I said, I stay highly focused. I'm selfish for myself,
Yep.
for my mental health. So my health is everything. So there's nothing wrong with being selfish like that for your health. I still enjoy being around my closest friends and family.
Right.
But I'm not, since I'm towards the end of my career, I don't want the added stress of negativity.
Right.
So if you're not trying to be positive or bring anything positive to me, then I don't allow that to seek in, because one thing we don't get back is time.
Right.
So I want to make sure everything is productive, a learning experience, constantly trying to still learn things. And
Keeps your mind young.
yeah, like I said, I'm always 12. And people who know me know I have a 12-year-old mentality at times. I'm that boyish, little knucklehead at times that I remind myself, like, look, no matter how old I am, I'm always be that 12 or 13-year-old boy that really enjoy life.
Yeah.
Don't have to be that serious.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the thing. Even though as I went through my career, my journey in my career, it had some dark times, some real dark times. One of the darkest times I had when I was being discriminated against for my personality. And that's very difficult, because somebody said I was too likable. And that was kind of disheartening. And actually, it's the word what I want to use to describe that. Because to be discriminated against because your personality, that's pretty tough.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
not because you're doing something that's out of the norm or something annoying. People are just jealous of you. Right? And you look at these people like, so what have I done to you to cross you? So as a young person with a young mind, I'm just navigating the beginning of my career, and I have these grown men that I'm call myself looking up to because they're in leadership, and they saying ignorant things like that. It was first of all, it was scary because it felt like you was on an island by yourself. It's like, who do you tell? Who you turn to? How do I find someone who can give me advice to how to navigate this?
Right.
And that was a long doctor. But then my confidence, I'm not changing who I am. I'm who I am because life experiences and things like that. And if you don't like my personality, just supervise me and be consistent with me.
Right.
And I don't like using this F word, but I will. But it's fair, because not everything in life is going to be fair, right?
Right.
Even with me dealing with that challenge of me being, because of my personality, I learned a lot about myself through that whole drawn out incident, because that lasted for a long time. And they did a lot of things, put a lot of hurdles in my way, but I refused to be denied. Okay, and a lot of things I have truly learned, like I said, when I was talking about the discrimination because of my personality, and sent me into a dark place, which then led to burnout because I started calling out work, all kinds of things. So I mentally was burned out trying to outthink these individuals.
Right.
Because they were just abusing their power. They were just abusing their power, right? So it caused me to be burned out. I mean, like, I was up at night, not getting enough rest, because I'm like, okay, what's going to happen tomorrow at work? What kind of crappy thing they're going to try to do to me, or position they're going to try to put me in to make me seem like that I'm less than. But what they didn't know, they made me stronger. I learned every facet of my job. And there was no place that some people might say, I don't want that post or that position. And once I learned it, it came ease with me. So now I'm learning things that people don't want it. And now I was consistent in there. I wasn't making no mistakes. So you just made me look even better, because now I was problem solving things, and it made me more confident in myself.
Right.
So I took that negative and turned it into a positive, because I definitely was burned out. It would be nothing for me to come in and look, tomorrow I'm taking a mental health day.
Right.
But now I have perfect attendance for the last 27 years, easy. Trust me, the first 3 years of my career was whew.
Yeah.
But I definitely have perfect attendance for 27 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So.
I can't say that.
Yeah.
Do you think that was your breakthrough moment? Do you think that was the moment where you were like, I'm not gonna let this career take me down?
It was a aha moment. So when I went to the EAP, and I had an excellent counselor, and she helped me navigate those dark times, and I came out through the other side, knowing myself even more confident in myself.
What do you think about the role of cumulative stress or trauma, the demands of the job? How do you think that affects, or how do you think that plays into burnout and just retention in general?
Over time, we see and we encounter a lot of things, right? So it just piles up. So that's where that come from. You just need to know how to compartmentalize, and if you feel that you're just not getting past things before it started to go down the road to burn you out, because see, a lot of times people think it's physical. But like I said when we first started, it's the mental exhaustion that gets you, right? Mentally, if you're constantly thinking about something, that's why I gave you that example about me being discriminated against. Because people are like, how you can add, well, it is because if I'm constantly thinking about it, it's preoccupying my mind. So if I'm busy, I'm not thinking about it. Then I get that downtime and I'll start thinking about it.
Right.
So you need to have that outlet and seek additional assistance to help you move past some things. Because see, a lot of us haven't experienced a lot of things in life. So when we experience something for the first time and you never experienced it before, and you don't have someone you can turn to talk to help navigate those things, yeah, it's easy for us to get hung up on that.
Right.
And that's natural. But see, public safety, not me,
Right.
can never happen to me. You saw someone get injured very badly, or didn't bother me, but then you woke up in the night for the last month, or you was in a shooting incident and you can't get past it. And then a lot of times people don't even realize you witnessed something in reality, right? The real world situation. Then you turn around and look at the movies, and those movies can be a trigger because it's a violent movie, and it could trigger something that you actually seen while you was on duty.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm very careful about what I subject myself to, excuse me.
Right.
And I'm very aware of that. So I'm very careful with that.
Yeah. So here's the big question. If you could face yourself, your younger self, 27 years ago, what's one thing that you would tell yourself?
It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to seek help. It's okay to ask for help. All right, because the old saying, when Superman is burned out, who he turn to?
Right.
Right? So it's the same thing for public safety and my service, men and women. If you're starting to feel it, head that way to being burned out. But you might not even recognize it. See, that's the thing. You might not even recognize you heading towards burnout.
Right.
I just want you to have an open mind and an open heart. So if someone say, hey, brother, or hey, sister, are you doing okay? Let them talk to you instead of just shutting them up or changing the conversation because you don't want to have that real conversation.
Right.
Because somebody might have noticed that. Something you don't even realize you're going through. Because burnout is real.
Oh, yeah.
You can look untidy in your uniform if you're wearing a uniform. You can look sloppy in your business attire. You can just look exhausted.
Right.
You're not coming to work. You're calling out a lot. All kinds of mood swings, all kinds of things can happen from burnout. And so if someone recognizes it in you and they just concerned and ask about it, I just want you to pause for a moment, hear what they have to say, and be honest with yourself. Don't be in denial.
Right. I think a lot of public safety agencies and organizations now are starting to go towards this wellness focus, which is great.
They are. Towards the end of my career.
Yeah. I think the military, they had like master resiliency and stuff like that for years, but that has evolved and become something bigger. And now, like I said, public safety is getting into that as well. And that just plays into what you were saying, what you would say to your younger self. And I think it's so important for leaders especially to be vulnerable and share those moments and say things like you just said. I wish you didn't say it directly, but by telling your younger self that, you wish you had that mentality, that climate back then. Just being able to break that stigma now for these young people coming into this line of work and letting them know that This is a different culture now.
It's a generational thing.
Yeah.
So you got to remember, all my predecessors were probably baby boomers and things like that. And a lot of those males, especially males, it appears that you're weak.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they didn't recognize it. That's why they were so burnt out that the suicide rate was what it was with them and things like that. But now we have come so far, we do recognize burnout.
Mm-hmm.
We do recognize the depression and warning signs that, and a lot. We don't turn a blind eye to a lot. And I think we are much more open and honest about those conversations now than they used to be.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those individuals turn to alcohol,
Mm-hmm.
or they can be abusive at home.
Right.
So I think as a society as a whole, we have come a long way, and it's not making you feel alienated to feel, okay, I'm burned out. Okay, what part of burnout? I'm depressed too. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to seek help.
Right.
And you don't feel like it's wrong.
Yeah.
It's natural. It's natural to feel that way.
Yeah. Well, and I think when we put things in place like peer support and wellness teams and having wellness coordinators around, and again, just talking about it, bringing that out into the open, I think it just makes it a lot easier. And I think we're getting to a point where that wall that we call stigma is going to be broken down, and people are going to feel more comfortable to seek the help that they need. And then there's things that are coming into play like disciplinary diversion. So, we're addressing performance issues where they're at, and we're holding people accountable for what they have to do, but there's that personal element, I think, as well, where as supervisors we can utilize mandatory diversion, meaning as a condition of your employment here, we know you're telling us you've got this thing going on, you need to seek help, and we're mandating it now. We always want to give people their autonomy to do what they need to do for themselves, but I think that's probably something that we'll see more and more in the future in public safety, is just more mandated help when we do have things like people showing up for work late over and over again, or maybe their uniform is just messed up, or there is some element of, I don't want to say abuse, but what's the word I'm looking for? Abuse, I guess, is the best word. Stuff like that going on. What I'm getting at is when people are hitting that burnout point, they're hitting that breaking point, and they are dealing with depression, and they're falling into these unhealthy coping mechanisms, and that starts to affect their work. I think that through wellness and through some of these other things that we're going to be able to help more people, even if they don't stay in public safety.
Yeah, I think now we're trying to say we recognize it better now than back then. We show empathy and sympathy enough to ask further questions to find out what the root cause of their issues are.
Right, root cause.
So I think we do, I would say majority of my generational supervisors with me, we knew how those bad supervisors made us feel, so we do the opposite of that to make sure that we don't make that person feel alienated or not being seen. Like I noticed that you've been coming in here late. I noticed these things. Now you have a disciplinary thing here. So what can we do to help you? Because what's really the root cause of, is a family member, a mother or father sick?
Right.
Are you worried because you have a sick child at home? It might sound crazy or facetious, and excuse me for even using the word crazy on your podcast, but not sarcastic. So it might sound facetious that it could be an animal. It could be a pet.
Absolutely.
It could be a cat. It could be a dog that they really care about.
Right.
And they're very attached to that because it's a family member to them.
Yeah.
And some people are like, no, but you're not in that home with that individual.
Right.
And that cat or that dog give them that comfort that they need, and they are definitely sick, then yeah, you should show some compassion and sympathy for them.
Right.
And that's the issue that some of us have.
Yeah, no, I definitely think we have to meet people where they're at.
Yeah.
Because we don't know what's going on at home. We don't know their situation. Maybe that dog or that cat, that pet, whatever, is the only family that they have.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's leading into my next question for you, is how can supervisors recognize and support the struggles that that we go through. And from my perspective, and one of the things that I've set at the top of my priority list is just knowing your people. Because the more you know, the better a leader you are.
Yeah, and one of my old sayings that I like to say, don't never forget where you come from
Right.
and where you're trying to go.
Right.
With the organization I work for now, I want to leave it better than how it was when I first got there.
Right.
That's always been my goal. And that's to be my legacy. Because I want to be able to touch people and they remember a conversation or something I might have said in the past that was a positive impact on them. Even when I'm happen to be the supervisor and give out disciplinary actions or something. Right. I think I do a darn good job of that, balancing my administrative portion, my coaching, mentoring, and because I'm not a manager, I really feel like I'm a true leader. So, and that's where my confidence come in at, not cockiness, but very confident.
Right.
You know?
And I think mentorship, you mentioned that just now, mentorship is another part of that supervision, and you don't even have to be a supervisor to be a mentor, but mentorship is another big part of keeping people engaged and
passing on your knowledge to them.
Yeah,
what are you trying to say?
I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, you do.
But the point was basically that mentorship is a big part of an mentorship is an important part of any organization, especially when we're talking about public safety, keeping people engaged, keeping people focused, keeping people from doing the things that they don't know will lead to burnout. For me, coming into this career, and I wasn't young. I wasn't like these 21-year-old kids coming into public safety brand new, but it was the beginning of my career. I raised my kids to a point where they could be somewhat independent. So for me, burnout came because I was like, I'm going to do this job and I'm going to do the best I can do, and I'm going to stand out because I know I can do this and I know I can be one of the best.
And that's overreaching.
It is.
Because you put yourself part of too many things.
Well, not so much that as much as I was like, oh, I'm going to work all the overtime I can work. I'm going to work in every section of this department. I'm going to get to know every little piece of information I can as fast as I can, instead of pacing myself and spreading that out over time. So for me, it wasn't necessarily the things that I put on my plate, because I'm a plate has to be full person or I don't feel whole. So yeah, I definitely took on a lot, but over that, for me, burnout came from thinking that I needed to learn everything as fast as I could.
And you wouldn't call that overextending yourself? In
a way, yes, because I'm working more hours than I probably should have been working. But as far as like responsibility-wise, it's different. It's different for me.
Is it? You different from everybody else? Huh?
No.
You sure?
No, not everybody else. There's other people like that.
Oh, you overachiever?
Yes, actually.
So being an overachiever, you can burn yourself out because you overextended yourself.
Yes.
So for you too.
Yes. I'm here to admit it. Like,
you sure?
I am. Yeah.
That was like pulling that through. Like you didn't want to admit that, No. You was like, no. I just want to learn everything.
Yeah.
You're
but it's
overachiever.
The same as you were saying earlier. We got to take care of everybody else, and we're not so good at taking care of ourselves.
That's true.
I'm the same way. We all fall into that. I think it's a type A personality trait.
You got some selfish type A personality people.
Me?
No, I said you have some selfish.
Yes. Yeah.
I didn't say that. You feeling guilty or something?
No.
No, you just said that.
I thought you were saying
No. I say you have some selfish. No, I told you to be selfish I told you I'm selfish when it comes to my mental health, my mental well-being. And there's nothing wrong with being selfish when it comes to that. And a lot of people, some people will actually call you out. They were like, hey, we doing such and such. I'm like, nah, that's not what I want to do this weekend.
Right.
These are the plans I have. That sounds suck, but don't worry about it. It's for me.
Right.
It's not for you.
Right.
It's not even for you to understand. But thank you for inviting me anyway.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep my previous plans.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with us being selfish and taking care of ourselves.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm not going to say I'm in a unique position, but I think I'm in a little bit of a different position in my life, in my career, whereas, like I said, I started my career almost 15 years later than most people do in public safety, especially law enforcement. I'm in an age where my mind and my life experience is bringing me to a point where I want to be selfish about that kind of thing. I want to be selfish with my time. I want to be selfish about my mental health. I want to be selfish about just doing me. My kids are grown. They don't need me to mother them in the way that I have in the past. Of course, I have to be there for them and all that, but that's one thing that is becoming a big shift for me in my careers. I'm not burnt out. I'm not giving anything up. I'm not walking away from anything that I've built for myself, but I'm definitely taking more time to focus on what I want and what I need, and that is keeping me from burnout. Like I said, it's a little different, I think, for most. I'm in the middle of my career, but I guess physically and mentally and as my life experience, I'm more advanced than most people who have 10 years in, like me.
Right, I hear that.
Yeah. Let's see. Do you have any advice on how to differentiate between needing a break versus needing a shift in career?
Well, we all know we need a break when we take that vacation, and then you say, "Well, I want to extend that vacation. I'm not ready to go back." That's just having a break. But when you feel like you definitely cannot walk back through the doors of that employer's office, then you know it's time to switch up. But it's time to switch up if you have an ulcer from it, so like some type of ailment. If you physically getting sick or you have migraines and things like that from the job, or you see, because let's fix this. So a job is a job. You just show, but a career is something that you're passionate about.
Right.
So if you know that passion is gone within your career, it's time to switch then.
Yeah.
But like I said, everything runs its course.
Yeah.
And all chapters come to an end. So
Absolutely.
you'll recognize that when it's time to walk away.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I've had to talk to people about who've left this line of work is it's no shame. You served your community. You did what you wanted to do, what you needed to do, and what you were supposed to do. And if walking away is the right thing for you right now, you're making the right choice. You're not letting anybody down. It's not about that. It's about, what's right for you where you're at.
Right.
And,
that's true.
Yeah. So I think, like you said, just, you know when you know.
You do.
Have you ever had a moment where you where you were about to walk away?
Yeah, the burnout got to me. Sometimes you can get the wrong supervisor. And the supervisor is a supervisor versus a leader. And when you said earlier, you should know your subordinates. So you know what type of leadership style, coaching style, mentorship, how you should approach them. And then sometimes you have those individuals who are very selfish and they're oblivious to who they have working for them, working with them. And it can cause you to start getting burnt out. You be like, how much more can I tolerate? So if you start using that word, tolerate, deal with, then, right, I felt like it was pushing me out, not on my terms. So it got to be on my terms. I'm not stubborn by any means, but that will happen. That was a huge issue that I was going through. It depends on what your supervisor is. And then you lose that drive and want to come to work. So then I'd be ready to leave, right? So even I was affected by that myself. You can have nice people and a supervisor don't mean they should be a supervisor.
Right.
Sometimes you got to have patience. There's a lesson learned in everything we go through. So what I learned was that it wasn't a toleration or dealing with. It was that don't pay so much close attention to what they're doing to allow it to bother you. So it's an old saying, if it don't apply to you, let it fly, right? If it don't concern you, then why are you concerned about it? So what I'm saying is that it's out of your control, then don't concern yourself with that.
Yeah.
Do what you're supposed to do. I ain't saying keep your head down and be like you got your head in the sand, like an ostrich. What I'm saying is that if it don't concern you, then don't stay in your lane. That's what I'm telling you to do, pretty much.
Yeah.
Stay in your lane. So I had to stay in my lane instead of being concerned about so many other things that was going on.
Yeah. Something you said reminded me. I was in a class yesterday. I don't know if you've ever met or heard of the former or retired chief of the Herndon Police, Maggie DeBoard. She's actually now the president of the Foundation for First Responder Wellness. And she was sharing with us yesterday, there was a survey that went out through, I want to say it was through DCJS, but regardless, wherever it came from, the point I was trying to make is we've brought up leadership quite a few times, but she said that one of the questions that was asked had to do with why do people leave public safety, and what causes the biggest stress in public safety. And
Poor leadership.
Number one answer is organizational stress related to poor leadership.
Yeah.
And I knew that. There's been other surveys, there's been other studies, other things that have come out in the 10 years that I've been in this line of work, but that has always resonated with me. I watched my husband be a leader in the military, and I watched his leadership and the way that he dealt with that kind of thing and what kind of leader he was. And I've had other leadership outside of public safety, and that's just something that's always stood with me is I can't be that guy. Can't. I want to be the kind of leader that people want to emulate. And tying that back into burnout, that's a really big eye-opener. Again, it's just something that is repeated and repeated, and leaders just have to be better.
Yeah, that we do, and we need to stay focused on that because it's getting harder and harder to find people to come into public safety or even to the military and things like that. I mean, quality people. I ain't said qualified. We want quality people. People who want to show up for the career, not a job and try to collect a paycheck. And I think all public safety, from the medical field all the way through law enforcement, are all suffering from that right now.
Absolutely.
And I blame that on a lot of different things, but definitely on leadership, though.
Yeah.
Because once the word get out, don't go there. They horrible supervisors.
Right.
They just managers, micromanagers, and things like that. And people, and one thing about this generation coming up, they all about their time.
Yeah.
They all about that time, and you're not going to speak to them any kind of way.
Right.
You know, my generation, you do what you're told, no question anything. You don't speak unless you're spoken to. All right, so different type of generation.
Yeah.
But me as a leader, I made sure I was flexible enough to stay on all the trends and make sure that I'm tuned into those things and be fully aware. I know my subordinates and I know what things to push them, to motivate them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we already talked about some advice that you would give to your younger self, and I think most of us would probably give that same advice to these new people coming in, these younger people coming into this career field. And I think just to tie it all together and close out, burnout can end in two different ways. It can take you out, or you can use that. And again, use that moment as a breakthrough to where you learn to reevaluate your priorities. What are your values? What are your life goals? And use that to give you a greater sense of self-awareness and build resilience and longevity for this career. If you want this to be your career and you are committed and it works out for you in that way, I think you have to learn how to break through that burnout in order to create that longevity.
And you need to learn patience.
Oh, yeah.
So you won't put too much on your plate trying to learn everything at once.
Calling me out?
No, I'm calling you out. I'm just letting. So if I have any young listeners, I just want them to know everything don't happen when you want it to happen.
Right.
It happens when it need to happen.
Right.
So with that being said, you gotta learn patience.
Yeah.
And pace yourself.
Yeah. So there's your advice. Learn patience. Pace yourself.
Or you'll learn patience the hard
All
way.
good things come to those who wait, right?
That's right. Very true.
Right. Well, I think that's it. It was a good conversation. I always value your advice, always. And then my call to action, my challenge for anybody out there listening is just, I'm encouraging you, listen to yourself, be selfish, check in on yourself, check in on your peers, learn those things that you need to recognize in others, to be open and honest with them, be that good friend who's going to be that good friend who's going to tell them, you're not yourself. What can I do to help, or who can I refer you to? Learn the resources, pocket those, and hand them out. when you need to.
Be honest. Be honest with yourself, and be honest with the person you're trying to see through whatever they're going through.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again so much for spending some time with me and offering up your advice here and telling us a little bit about your story. I greatly appreciate it.
Well, thank you for the invite. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I learned something else about myself tonight just through this conversation. So I look forward to hearing it.
Yeah, of course. And we'll look forward to having you back at some point in the future.
If you invite me, I'll be back.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Be safe.